And sometimes it's a real struggle. I've wasted, set periods where I'm trying to design for hours and I just can't. It's not happening. Nothing good is coming out here. I can't use any of this kind of.
Yeah, it's great because we get to use this space and it offers the aesthetic that we're looking for, which is, a comfortable, intimate space to just have conversations and not feel as though, because I've noticed with some podcasts, it's when they zoom out and you see BTS footage, there's like 10 other people in the room. And I find sometimes for the guest, they may not be comfortable having the types of conversations we have with like 10 other people sitting there. Right? Because now it's one thing to talk to strangers and it's only 2 of them. You get to know each other, you relax a little, and then you've got like 10 other people snapping photos and BTS behind the scenes. It kind of throws your rhythm off. So that's where we found that having this a bit more of an intimate space makes more sense. Yeah.
Totally.
So Christopher Bates, welcome to the Gents Talk podcast. How are you?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're glad you're here. A lot of exciting stuff going on in the world of fashion and a lot of exciting stuff going on in your world. But for those who know you only from what they see online, tell us a little bit about Christopher and how you got to where you're at today.
Yeah, I mean, the online shows a small part of what the reality is. It's typically almost like a highlight reel. I imagine people think I lounge around in tuxedos drinking martinis all the time, but no, that's really less than 1% of the reality, and it's a lot of hard work and grinding that goes into it behind the scenes. How did I get here? It's a long story. I grew up in Vancouver and was passionate about clothes from a young age. My mom dressed my brothers and I in some pretty cool brands in like the 80s, TNC Surf Design, Chip and Pepper. We wore lots of neon. And I was an energetic kid, and I felt like when I put on an outfit I liked, it gave me more energy. And so I felt good. And I was aware then of, the power of clothes and a good outfit. I was a creative kid. I started sketching ideas for clothes and logos, and I had a book full of designs by the time I was 13. But growing up in Vancouver at that time, I didn't really know that fashion was a career or an industry in which to pursue. You're thinking traditional career paths, study business or architecture, law, things like that. But I always wanted to do something creative. It wasn't until I started traveling to Europe in my late teens and early 20s that I became really inspired. I remember being in Stockholm, Sweden, and I was just blown away by the individualism and the style of people there. And I thought, these people would like my ideas, because I continued to sketch a little bit here and there and make notes when I had a good idea related to clothing. It just seemed to be, I was drawn to that type of creative thought. So at that point, I was 26. I had been working in marketing for 5 years, but I asked myself, at that time, is this what I want to do with the rest of my life? And the answer was no. And the next question was, if you could do anything and not fail, what would it be? And I was lucky. I had mentors growing up, and they actually asked me that question. And I thought about it, and it was like a lightning bolt. It's like, I want to be a fashion designer. So I quit my job. I sold my apartment. I moved to Milan. I studied at one of the best design schools in the world, Istituto Marangoni. It was extremely difficult. I didn't really know what I was doing or what I had signed up for because I wasn't good at sewing. I didn't know how to make patterns. And actually, I wasn't very good at drawing, to be honest. But I had a friend who I used to work out with, and he told me, because I told him what I wanted to do, and he's like, did you know that you can learn how to draw? And I said, I didn't actually know that. I thought people were born with it, or you were done.
See? A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, but there's a book. It's called Drawing from the Right Side of the Brain or something. Anyway, I went through the book and started doing the exercises, and I was still terrible. At the beginning of the year, it was embarrassing, what I was drawing. But, that's one of the ways you express yourself as a designer. You have to
Yeah.
be able to communicate your ideas, and traditional drawing is still relevant and really important. But I did learn. I had a really good teacher at school, and that's something that we spent, the first few months of school just doing a ton of drawing. And I would stay up, late at night or all night working on it. And after a few months, I was actually pretty good. And you can learn how to draw.
That's crazy.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So after school, I moved back to Vancouver, and I started my brand. That was always my goal, was to have my own brand. So I didn't go, the other route, which would have been to work for other designers. I did very little of that.
Why? What was the thought process there?
Well, because I wanted to start my own brand. I had all these ideas. I didn't want to give all my best ideas to someone else. I wanted to use them and see them through on my own. So, I think the hardest part is actually starting your own business, starting your own line. So to this day, I don't know if that was the right decision or not. That's what I did. But would it have been better? Would it have been more helpful had I gone to work for other designers? I can't say. Maybe. But maybe I'd still be working there also.
Well, you could have easily gone down a very different path, right?
True.
Like you end up with another major brand, and you're just designing for that brand as opposed to the Christopher Bates brand.
That's right.
So if you can go back in time and tell younger Christopher some piece of advice, what would that be?
Wow. I knew it was going to be tough, and it certainly has been. It still is, in fact. But I would just, probably just to be ready, just to be ready for anything, and, make sure you have your thick skin on, and, stay focused. Don't spend money is a good one when you're starting. Let's say you have a little financing together. You've got to be really careful with every dollar, and to this day, I've learned that more over time, but certainly when you start, everything, they say this with a lot of businesses, like it costs twice or three times as much as you're going to think. It takes 2 or 3 times longer. And all of these sayings are, I would say, pretty true.
Yeah.
So you just have to be really careful with how you spend.
It's not easy being an entrepreneur.
No. And that's the unique thing about my situation, is that you're a designer, which is difficult in of itself. An entrepreneur is also difficult.
Yeah.
So when you're an entrepreneur designer, it's actually really it's kind of crazy. It's pretty extreme.
How did you just get your name out there? Like, obviously the clothing was good, but still the right person has to see it.
Yeah.
Like, is it more the people you know? Was it just luck, random chance, or just right event at the right time? Is it just from pushing it?
Yeah, it's everything. When I was launching my brand in Vancouver 2008, I actually spent a large part of my budget on hiring a really great PR firm in Vancouver. So they covered my launch event, and we did like a 3-month contract, and they were able to actually get me some really great press pieces. And I think that helped a lot. I did a big fashion show, a high profile event, called in a lot of favors. And that, also helped kind of put me on the scene. It was like a big announcement. Vancouver's a relatively small town, so if you do a big event like that,
Everyone knows.
It can start to cause some waves. The clothes, you've got to have some cool clothes. You've got to get some interesting people wearing it, and people talking, getting into some stores, and then supporting them with events. We did that as well. We ultimately got some good traction in Toronto with Got Style as well, who we still sell to this day. So, it's really, you need to do everything. Like, I remember when I was presenting my business plan to investors, and they were saying, okay, we like you, we like the plan, but can you make these clothes? Are people going to wear them? Can you get them on celebs? Can you get into magazines? Stores going to pick them up? All of these things. Yes, it's going to happen, but they weren't willing to invest until I checked off those boxes.
Yeah, and it's almost as though like that's where you take off the designer hat and now the entrepreneurial hat comes in.
That's
the
right.
marketing, it's the deal making, it's the conversations, the relationship building, it's the maintaining of the relationships and all that stuff. It's that I feel as though almost as more takes up more of your time than designing.
It's true. Yeah, the business side of things is really important. Business, communications, networking, you know, it's not like you're naturally good at all of these things. Like you have a lot of things that there maybe are weaknesses, or things that make you uncomfortable, but you really have to power through and ignore those things, or just become good and learn things, get out of your comfort zone as much as possible. I think that is what helps you succeed as an entrepreneur.
How do you block out the negativity? We're always interested in that because it seems like for individuals who've achieved a measure of success, there's a lot of negativity and setbacks and hurdles and obstacles, and you push that rock up the mountain only for it to come right back down on you, and now you got to look up at that mountain and do it all over again. How do you handle those?
It's true. Rejection is a big part of being a designer, because each season you make your new collection. Hopefully you're proud of it and you want to show it to the world, and then you start pitching stores. Most of them will say no. That's just reality, you know.
What are some of the reasons they say no?
It's tough. Let's say you're pitching a department store. So they have their core brands. These are brands that they deal with, you know, season after season, and that takes up maybe at least 80% of their budget. And they know this is happening because they have long-term relationships. They might even have, these brands may even have space they rent in the store. So you're not going to, you know, push any of those brands out. The remaining 20% of their budget is it's like their open to buy budget. So what you want to do is get in on that, you know, 20%. But that 20% is already being shared across several different brands they've already had, brands that have been pitching them for several seasons, maybe even for years. And then you're trying to get in on that. So it's really competitive. Like, you know, there's probably 1,000 brands out there similar to mine in certain ways, in ambitions, and they want to get into these department store slots. So, you know, it took me years to manage to get into any department stores. It's really tough. So
you're competing against a lot of other people at that point.
Yeah.
You are. You're competing against, you know, these other emerging brands, aspiring brands like mine, but you're also competing directly with billion-dollar mega brands.
Yeah. And if they want a bigger share for whatever reason, they have that first mover's advantage.
They have a lot of advantages. Yeah, it's tough. So, you know.
And do you design, so like you sketch the thing out, you design it, do you pitch it first and then create, you know, the lineup, like the 1,000 pieces, 500 pieces, whatever it ends up being, or do you do all that and then pitch it?
Only with my very first collection, because all I had was designs.
Right.
So I was actually walking into stores, asking to speak to the owner, showing them my designs. Hey, what do you think? And actually, Melissa Austria, the owner of Godstyle, I remember walking into her store and I said, can I speak to the owner? She said, oh, that's me. I said, hi, I'm a designer from Vancouver. I'd love to show you my designs and let me know what you think. And I presented them to her and she liked them and said, you know, come back when the collection's ready and maybe I'll give you an order. So that was that combined with a few meetings.
Was that all like one conversation or like through a few conversations?
No, that was one.
Yeah,
it's a good conversation.
That's one. Very good
no, it really was. It really was, and that plus a few similar conversations I had in Vancouver was enough impetus for me to actually create my first collection, because it's a big investment and it's really tough, because at that point I didn't have all my suppliers, you know, organized. I didn't necessarily know how to make all of those designs, right? Because there was leather bombers, there was, you know, dress shirts, there were blazers, there were it was a variety of different pieces. So and working out of Vancouver, it's not exactly a fashion manufacturing hub, especially not for, you know, designer, more evening style, which was my style, is my style. So anyway, we made the collection and and then we started. So that was,
How did it feel when you got that first piece of clothing that you designed and you saw it for the first time, fully made, ready to go?
It's mixed. I mean, certain pieces come out really well. Like, you only have so much that you can do, because I'm not making the pieces myself. We had to do that in school, but it's not really my area of expertise or have the time to do that. So you're working with other producers, right? So I was able to find fabrics I like, and then you take the fabrics to the producer with your designs, maybe some samples for fit and so on, and then they actually do the cutting and sewing production of the samples. So, there's certain things that don't turn out exactly as you imagine. This still happens, all the time. You have your design, you have measurements, it's very specific, and so it's visual, but then you also write down everything as well, so it can be read and checked off, but still lots of, variances happen. So I guess at the end of the day, like, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so when I see something is a little bit off, that can be frustrating. But at the same time, some of the samples came out really well, and I was really happy with them.
Yeah.
The jacket I'm wearing right now is actually from that collection, my very first collection.
Nice.
So I've been wearing this for 14 years,
Nice.
and it's, in good shape. So
It's good material.
it's very good. Yeah, it's Italian new look leather. So as soon as you have the right material and the right producer, you can make something really good quality that you're proud of.
Yeah.
And that's a really good feeling, to be able to wear it and to have this for 14 years.
Yeah.
And you're proud of it.
Still wear it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it still looks good too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's that also leads to like sustainability too, right?
Yeah.
So if you make a good quality product, that in of itself is sustainable.
And what happens when you create something and you see it and you're like, oh, this is shit. This is, I don't even want to look at this anymore.
It happens. It happens. And because, you have a tight budget, you don't really want to waste any samples. So it's pretty rare that I won't even photograph it. Like, I might include it in the lookbook. I might present it to buyers, because you never know what people like.
Right.
But yeah, certain prototypes, you don't love, and I have them in my studio, and sometimes I'm actually able to sell them, because you want to sell everything that you make.
Sure,
so
yeah.
You'd be surprised. Like, you can find a happy home. I want to find a happy home for all of my products, and even some that maybe I didn't think turned out that well, or that I don't love personally, someone else usually does.
Yeah.
And I'm able to find a good home for them. So, yeah, and it's great when that happens.
That's awesome.
You're a very, very busy man. You are a very busy man, right?
Yeah.
How much do you prioritize, like, having your own, like, free time as well? Because you still have to, you're saying you're very busy during the week, but you said you have some time on the weekend usually, right? Like, how important is that weekend time for you?
Oh, I think it's really important. You have to reset. I mean, if you get a little bit, wound up, you do get stressed out. I push myself really hard, and you have to take breaks. When you own your own business, there is always an unlimited amount of work to do. You can always be working on something, to move the business forward. But you have to have some structure. So, I set pretty standard hours during the week. And then on weekends, I allow myself some flexibility, Saturday and Sunday. And Friday, I probably won't work as late as I do the rest of the week. So Friday night and Saturday night are times that I can spend with my friends and, blow off steam, have some fun. And then, Saturday and Sunday afternoon also are sort of like half days. And that's, a comfortable amount of hours and amount of work for me to tackle in a week.
Because it puts you in a nice balance between burning out and still being able to be creative. And
yeah. I'm on. You're always on that edge.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm on that edge.
Fine balance, and
Yeah.
you don't want to trip over.
Yeah, but I do have, there's structure. Like, I'll stop at 7 p.m. and exercise, every day.
Yeah.
And that,
Is that like an alarm on your phone, or is it you just look and it's about 7 o'clock, or is it?
well, I use Google Calendar on my computer, so you just get a little pop-up reminder. So everything is organized in the calendar. So
Put everything in your calendar.
everything is in the calendar.
Everything.
Yeah, everything. Yeah.
No, it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like I put quite a few things in calendar, but not everything. And then it's usually things I don't put in. As I start putting more and more things in, because it just helps me, I guess, to forget about.
Yeah.
So I don't need to, like, if you get a haircut, even though it's my buddy who cuts my hair and it's down the street, I'll still put it in for that time. And then it's like, okay, if I'm going to go, for quick meetings, always like, because first it was always just business. I put in calendars, like now personal things got put too, because also make sure you
Keeps
put the
you
time.
organized.
Yeah. And then like,
Yep.
if you don't put the personal things in the calendar, you kind of push them off.
Yeah, or you might be late.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's real. It's a lifesaver.
What happens when the creative juices are not flowing?
Yeah,
How do you break out of that?
it happens. I mean, you hear about it with writers; they get writer's block.
Yeah.
So I think the same thing happens with designers, and sometimes it's a real struggle. I've wasted set periods where I'm trying to design for hours and I just can't. It's not happening. Nothing good is coming out here. I can't use any of this kind of thing. So I don't know that you really can. It helps that I keep files of inspiration and sketches, and these I've accumulated for a long time. Since before I was a designer, I was keeping things that interested me. So I can always go into those files and kind of recycle those old ideas and inspiration, if needed. So I think that helps a lot. But really, what you need to do is just do something else.
What do you do?
Anything. Well, just work on some other type of project, other than the design part. Because the design part, I don't feel like it can be forced, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's just got to come to you.
Yeah. And when it comes, it's the best feeling. I find myself really happy because I'm doing what I wanted to do. And I'm doing what makes me happy. And I'm in the zone. And when that happens, I could design for hours and hours and hours. And time is irrelevant. I'm really, productive and enjoying it. I would love to do more of that. I wish I had more time like that.
Well, I was going to ask, like, as a designer, I imagine that's the real thrill for you, right? And so all this other stuff that you have to do, the comms, the meetings, the marketing, and this and that, yes, I can imagine from the lens of an entrepreneur, when you do those and you see your business move forward, it's like, okay, yeah, good, it's moving in the right direction. But really and truly, the best part of it is creating something from within you and putting that out on paper and then seeing it come to life. How do you, is there a world that exists for you where you can offset some of the other stuff so you can purely focus on design, or do you feel for you would always have to have a hand in the other side?
No, I'm really, I've been working towards growing the business. I think that's your goal, right? As an entrepreneur, but also as a designer. So growing the business will mean, more resources, a bigger team, and in an ideal scenario, you have someone who can manage more of the business side of things and allow me to focus more on my strengths. So that's, I haven't achieved that yet, but it's something that I'm working towards.
Right. Well, and what advice would you give to, let's say, younger designers, ones who are about to enter the space? What sort of what do you know now that you wish you knew when you first started?
A million. That's so many things. I mean, I think being aware that the business side is as, if not more important than the design side of things. I mean, once you have your design, you need to know how to sell it, to communicate your ideas, to produce it. There's so many logistics, shipping, paperwork, finance. There's so many different hats and things you have to wear, to wear and be comfortable with. I think I would recommend a designer almost partners with someone else at the beginning, and there are a lot of relationships like that, in the industry where you've got a talented designer that's able to design, and then you have a talented business person who's able to handle that side of things. Because we were talking about finding your groove like in design. And it's not really a place where you can go in and out of and be interrupted constantly. Like if you're in that zone, you really need to stay there.
Yeah.
But the reality is, if it's during the day and the phone rings or a customer comes or, there's something that you have to do, that's really distracting. So,
Yeah.
and then you're like, oh, you've got to get back into that side of your brain, and it's really tough. So most of the design work I do now is I have to pull like an all-nighter or a late night. So I'll
when
do,
nobody can
yeah,
interrupt
and then,
you type of thing.
and you
Yeah.
can turn the phone off, because I do business in virtually all different time zones, right? So pretty much at any time your phone can ring, but you almost have to shut it off and pick a quiet time overall where you can just do that for at least a few hours, and then you can get a lot done with undisturbed design work in a few hours.
How do you get into the zone? Like I say, okay, you have like a 5-hour window, you go to your room or whatever, you have your place where you like to design.
Mm-hmm.
Is it like, do you need certain music playing? Do you need the lights lit low?
I think I'm better at night. Like I'm a
Mhm.
night owl, and I feel like more creative and more energetic at night. So that's one part of it. I almost need to have all my fabrics around. So you have your fabric swatches, your samples, and I love the fabrics. That's a big part of my being a designer. So I really love the fabrics. So I need to have the fabrics there, and I'm like, what should this become? And then it starts flowing. Now, music is also important, and I love Depeche Mode.
Okay.
That's my favorite band by far, and I feel like I am able to communicate at least my interpretation of their music into my clothing design, which
Interesting.
may sound like a stretch, but it's like it's how I feel when I listen to their music, and I picture, okay, what would I wear or my clients wear listening to that music, walking down the street or something.
Yeah.
And it's so it's an
It was
approach.
visualization essentially.
Yeah, and it also like it calms me in a way, the music, and it sort of helps turn on it inspires me, actually. It just inspires me in general. I think it's really beautiful and deep. It's poetic, and you're able to kind of translate that into clothing design.
And what inspires you to keep going?
Well, in some ways, people would say or think I've come a long way, but to me, I see more how much further I want to go. So I still feel like, I haven't achieved very much, and I have so much more, that I want to do. And also going back to what we talked about before, I want to be able to spend more time as the designer, because that's something I've rarely been able to do, where I can put all I've got into a collection. Now and again, there's pieces where I've put in, an extra effort and gone pretty much all the way that I want to go with them. But with a lot of pieces, I would say I haven't, and I want to do that.
So when you say there's so much more that you want to take, like so much further you want to go, what does that look like?
Like the big designer brands that like Armani and Tom Ford, Calvin Klein, Ralph Lauren, legends in the industry. That's the direction that I'm going, or that I want to go.
Yeah.
And what makes those brands what they are? Like I'm curious about it from the perspective of a designer.
Well, I think they're consistent, which is really important in terms of style and aesthetic. And then they're also, obviously very commercially successful. And, some designers and artists strive for more avant-garde, type of design and success. And I really respect that. And I love that type of design. But I think Karl Lagerfeld once said, like, there's nothing wrong with selling dresses. I think he was referring to this little black dress or something. And I'm like, yeah, like I want to design things that people actually wear and want and make them feel better, that make them feel confident. So that's another type of success that attracts me. You know, if you're doing a product that you're proud of and people want to buy it, I think that's like a big win, right?
Sure. I imagine it feels amazing or incredible when you see someone wearing one of your products, like even when you don't know them and you just see them wearing it.
Yeah, totally. And you know, you get inquiries from random people all over the world who find your work somehow. And when I have the time or when it's top of mind, I'll ask them like, hey, how did you find out about the brand? And that's always, you know, an interesting story. Today, I had a guy message me from Illinois in the U.S., and he's the minister at a big Italian wedding coming up. And he went to his tailor and he was asking for a Don Vito Corleone tuxedo. Specifically, he was showing him pictures. He's like, can you make me this? Can you make me this? And the tailor just like, I don't know. He didn't feel confident. So this guy was Googling online information about this tuxedo, and he came across my collaboration with Paramount for The Godfather, which is a relatively new collaboration. And we actually remade the Don Vito Corleone tuxedo. So this is the second time that it's happened sort of like that, where people were just Googling, and you know, lucky, I guess I have to credit our web guys that the SEO is actually working.
Yeah.
Because when you Google that, my tuxedo will come up.
Yeah.
So he was,
and that's a really that's a broad search when you search up Vito Corleone.
Right.
Yeah. Like you're going to get hits of all sorts of things.
Yeah. But that's how he found us. And someone else from the States, a similar scenario, found us that way. And, you know, they were really happy to be able to order, you know, this authentic, officially licensed piece. And I enjoyed, you know, the conversation with them. You know, the first guy's sending me pictures of himself. He's in Italy. He's getting lots of compliments. You know, this other guy's going to send me pictures from the wedding he's attending. And, you know, it's nice to have interactions with people all over the world that appreciate your work.
Yeah. So tell us about the Vito Corleone Paramount partnership, how that starts, who approaches who, like how all that works and where it's at today. So just for the, like I wore the Don Vito Corleone tuxedo. You were gracious enough to lend it to me for the Juno Awards in Edmonton. And we were talking prior to filming. We got a ton of compliments on that jacket, on the whole suit. And every time someone asked about it, I would just open it up and they would see the family crest, the Corleone family crest inside. And it was always such a cool moment because I grew up on The Godfather. I love The Godfather. Yeah. So that's a really cool thing just to be a part of, I can imagine. So maybe walk us through how that all started.
Sure. So I've had a pretty long relationship with Paramount. So Paramount is the parent company of Viacom, CBS, Nickelodeon, MTV, you know, Paramount Plus. It's this behemoth.
Yeah.
And years ago, I did a collaboration with MTV, sneakers and bomber jackets. And it got some pretty good traction in the world, but also some respect from people inside Paramount, because we're doing, you know, high quality products. I think that's important to reiterate that, you know, we produce everything in Italy with, you know, cutting edge materials, world class craftsmanship, and they appreciate that at Paramount. So I was actually meeting with the president of MTV at the time that the new Top Gun Maverick film trailer came out. So this was like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And this is kind of long-winded, but this is how it came about.
Go ahead.
Okay. So he asked if I had seen the new Top Gun Maverick trailer. And I said, yeah, like 20 times. Why? Like I'm a diehard Top Gun fan. And he said, well, maybe you could do something. And I said, what do you mean? That's crazy. He's like, well, put together a proposal like you did with MTV and send it to the head office. And I'm like, okay. So I did. I created, you know, a mini business plan and my designs, and they loved it. And I was able to obtain a license for Top Gun.
Sorry, before you continue, you had to create a business plan for it too?
Well, that's what I did. I created because you're going for a license. So they want to see that you're organized and, you know, how are you going to market and sell these products? You want to have some forecasts and things like that.
Okay.
You know, I did as much as I could to get the license. So yeah, maybe I went above and beyond, but I was able to get it.
Better
so
to
it's
get
worthwhile.
it. Yeah, absolutely.
So we we got the Top Gun license, and that's been going great. It's still an ongoing project. And I was meeting with the Paramount European teams. I was at the Much Music Video Awards in Budapest a little over a year ago. And they said, great, love the Top Gun. What about the Godfather? And I'm like, what about it? And they're like, next year, which was last year, is the 50th anniversary of the original film. Mm-hmm. And so we're doing a bunch of things for the Godfather 50th anniversary. I said, wow, that's amazing. Like, in my head, I'm thinking I'm already having a hard time managing Christopher Bates and Top Gun, because that's 2 lines. It is double the work.
Sure.
And then, but it's the Godfather. I mean, that's an offer that I can't refuse.
Yeah, exactly.
You were going to say that, weren't you?
You beat me to it.
I stole it. Okay. So I did the same thing as with Top Gun. I created all my designs and a business plan, and was able to get the license for the Godfather. So, yeah, that's how it came about. So now I'm doing 3 things, which is also pretty intense.
Yeah, that's a lot. Three. So that's essentially almost like 3 different brands that you're running.
It is.
How do you stay on top of all that?
Well, Google Calendar, everything is in there.
Yeah.
But I'm organized generally, so I have, a really good breakdown on my computer. I have, 3 kind of master files, for CB, Godfather, and Top Gun. I have 3 different inventory files, 3 different sales files, and you just have to keep them up to date. I have a great assistant at my studio, and she helps manage the inventory and the lists. So that's a big part of it, just staying like really crazy organized.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you do or say to, I guess, keep you motivated on those days where it's like, man, this is so much. Like, I don't know if I can do this.
And you do get those feelings. You
Mm-hmm.
do. I admit it. I present to the world and to people that know me this sort of, I don't really show, a softer side. I be like really tough, let's say. But you do have those feelings, of course. Things happen out of your control. You can have low energy or bad sleep.
But there's a level of self-awareness that exists to also know I'm not in the right space. I need to do that.
Yeah, and just, you just have to push yourself. That's it. I've pushed myself further than I've ever thought possible, and then past that, and past that, and past that, to the point now where I feel like there's not many boundaries or things that I won't overcome. Like, I have confidence, but the confidence, where does it come from? It comes from overcoming challenges. The more challenges you overcome, the more faith and belief you have in yourself to overcome any future challenges.
Right.
So there's things that have been thrown at me or things that have happened that are seemingly insurmountable, where most people, even the toughest, would be very tempted to throw in the towel or do something easier, because there's a lot easier ways to make money than to do what I do.
Right.
But
Yeah.
it's not all about that. I also still want to do something that I am passionate about, and I also happen to love challenges. So, it's like, I don't know if that's some sick thing, but because it can be really tough. But at the same time, I like it.
Is there a project similar to a Top Gun or a Godfather that that you would want to work on that's either not available or you're sort of pursuing?
So those, like Top Gun for sure, is surreal. Still thinking about it, and Godfather too. Those are 2 of the coolest brands I could have ever dreamed to work with. The only other one that comes to mind right away is James Bond.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I grew up watching the Sean Connery Bond movies with my dad.
Yep.
And I would say that had a profound impact on my life, how I am as a person, how I appreciate, design. It inspired me in so many ways. So yeah, Bond, personally and professionally would be the ultimate
Yeah.
So that would supersede Top Gun and The Godfather.
combined.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Who is
Bond
it?
would be number one because I love tuxedos as well and
Yeah.
evening wear.
Yeah.
And just the nonchalant way that, I always think of Sean Connery when I think of Bond.
Yeah.
But the way that he wore a suit, and you have to credit his tailor, but the way that he moved, he was so comfortable,
Yeah.
Yeah.
immaculate but comfortable. That is, that's priceless.
Do you like the Bond movies?
I've seen a few of them. Yeah.
For me, it's Pierce Brosnan. That's who I think of when I think of Bond.
He's great, but for me, it's Sean Connery, and then
Daniel Craig is. Up
I
there
didn't. I
too.
like.
he
Blonde
did a
Bond.
great job.
I like Blonde Bond. Yeah.
They're really good at casting these Bonds. Roger Moore had his charm.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a big Bond fan. That would be cool.
That would be the one.
Yeah.
So, fast forward 10 years. What's Christopher Bates doing? If you could manifest that ideal right now on this table, what would it be?
Well, I'd like to be in 10 years a giant step closer, if not already, more of an international brand.
Okay.
So, mono-brand boutiques in different stores around the world. Hopefully on a super yacht when I'm vacationing, right?
Just like Bond.
Yeah, like a Bond villain.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, just a lot further and happy, and let's say doing more design work,
Yeah.
being the brand ambassador for the company. Those are the things that I really enjoy, the things that I feel like I'm good at. So that would be a really good space. Having other people I trust run the business side and letting me focus on what I'm passionate about.
Yeah. That's awesome. I think the creativity that you require to do what you're doing, it seems like it's a fragile thing that you have to nurture and water and protect, which is why I think it becomes so important that when you're in that zone, it's like, everybody leave me alone. I need to, because you don't know when it comes back. Is there a fear there at all that, one day it'll just stop?
I don't think so. Like, if anything, for me, I feel like I have too many ideas. And
Okay, that's a good place to be.
Yeah, you have to cultivate the ideas that make sense for the brand and who your customers are going to like.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the market decides if you're successful or not.
Right.
That's something I learned actually after my first season, because when I started the brand, it was Christopher Bates for Ultra. So you can see that there, Christopher Bates for Ultra.
Okay.
So Ultra is something that means a lot to me personally, but people,
What does it mean?
It means like extra, super, going above and beyond. It was also this tag from a video game that I used to play when I was a kid called Killer Instinct.
Okay.
Yep.
And when you did this like 26 hit combo to finish the other fighter, it would be like Ultra, Ultra,
Yeah.
Ultra.
26 hit combo.
Yeah, it was insane. And eventually, like, I think you could even put the controller down and your player was still like doing
Going
the
at
combo,
it, yeah.
right? You just had to start it off right. And so I used to run around the house as a kid, like Ultra, Ultra, like, kind of crazy. But it meant a lot to me. And also, one of the best Depeche Mode albums is called Ultra. And they have a story about why Ultra as well. But I'll let you guys look that up. So it meant a lot to me. But other people were like, Ultra? Like, what's that? And even buyers were like, Ultra. Well, they're like, I can get an Ultra Slim TV or an Ultra, bleach toothpaste or whatever, right? It's already out there. And Ultra also has negative connotations in, say, professional soccer, where the ultras are like hooligans, like soccer, crazy soccer fans who, rage and beat each other up. So my friends in Europe were like, you can't use ultras, you can't use Ultra. And I'm like, okay, I get it. The market's saying no. But I'd already done a lot. I had, my website was ultramenswear.com and, all of these different things. Like I had made all these labels and my brand is Ultra. It's Christopher Bates for Ultra. But everybody's like, just use Christopher Bates. And that's something I was always prepared to do. It was in my head. But we had to get rid of Ultra. So that was a big lesson early on. And that goes back to the market, deciding. I won't do just anything, but it has to be something that I like and the market likes. And then you can balance, creative, commercial, be happy, make a living.
How do you reconcile when you create something you like, but the market doesn't like it? Like you look at it and you're like, this is gold. Like, what the hell's wrong with you people?
Yeah, that happens a lot, it does. You've got to know the market. Like Canada, for example, it's a fairly conservative market and fairly conformist.
How so?
Well, it's not like a fashion hub,
Right.
generally speaking, right? Like, I remember in my meetings with, a lot of buyers, they're like, they like the crazy stuff. They like 20% of my collection I usually do, like you said, it's stuff that I'm into. It's a little bit more experimental, forward, edgy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool stuff. But it's largely, the other 80% that they end up buying. They always want navy blazers.
Right.
Right? So I'll find a fabric that at least is different. Maybe it has a micro texture, micro pattern, or it's jersey. There's a lot of ways to make it interesting, but excuse me, I don't want to just do, navy blazers. Like I want to do some more interesting stuff, right?
That allows the creative expression to come out.
Yeah. You don't want to get pigeonholed. I have my famous kiss shirt, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
The white dress shirt with a red lipstick kiss on the collar. It's a great idea. It's our best seller of all time. I have a lot of people tell me like, oh, you need to put the kiss on everything. And I'm like, I think that's a big mistake. I've seen other designers do that. I won't name names, but I think it really
Pigeonholes you.
Yeah, it really limits you and pigeonholes you. And if that's all people are buying, I think you've kind of failed as a designer. So
Why?
Because then it's like, it should be able to stand up on its own, what you design, like your piece.
Okay.
So I don't do a lot of external branding. I'm very careful with it. Sometimes I've tried it and then I've taken it off.
Right.
Because I think the piece, if you have the right fabric, the right cut, the right design, even if it's clean, even if it's minimal, should speak volumes, and it's like class and it will last a long time. So that's, more my style of design. I think if you plaster it with like logos and things, it might be hot for a minute, but as a wearer, you're going to get tired of it.
Right.
And as people seeing it, you're definitely get tired of it. So
like those shirts that have the logo like all the way diagonal down the shirt, on the back, on the arms type of thing, like that's not something that, a Christopher Bates piece of clothing would ever, maybe not ever, but would not your style.
No, I don't do a lot of that. It's not my style. And style is the key word here, right? Because things can be fashionable, right? Like right now, I don't even know, because logos are going in and out. It seems like they've been pretty in for a while.
Yeah.
But I find that's a point where a brand is almost desperate, especially like a big brand, and they're trying to cash out. Like what happens if they all of a sudden remove all their logos? Are they going to lose those customers?
Right.
Maybe. It's risky.
Well, yeah, because I suspect there's a lot of people out there. I don't personally like to wear clothing that's overly flashy with the brand logo, because I just feel it takes away from all you're seeing is the logo. You stop paying attention to the actual article of clothing.
Right.
But there are a lot of people that you can easily tell if it doesn't have the logo splashed everywhere, they won't wear it.
Right.
So those are the customers that ultimately they would lose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a customer that I might not get either.
Right. Right.
But
It's a different market.
yeah.
What do you think about those big red shoes? The big red shoes? Have you seen them on like Instagram or TikTok? They're like the red ones that, if you haven't seen them, I don't know what to explain it.
I don't think I've seen them.
Yeah.
But it's like people are wearing them now, and it's like, I don't know if it's a fashion statement or just like people just want to wear them to.
I feel like people are moving towards more minimalistic looks. Like they just want the plain, it's at least now what I see typically, at least when I walk into stores, are sweaters that have no indication of who the brand is, and then they're either oversized or just completely plain, and that's the look that people seem to want to go for now.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, the pendulum swings, right?
Yeah.
And then we'll see how long that lasts. Then it might go again back towards major, logoing and
how fast
stuff.
can you adapt to those?
Well, for us, it's easy because we're small. So, we typically do 2 collections per year, a spring, summer, and a fall, winter. And then, a few pieces and maybe collabs throughout the year. But we have 2 core collections. So, we can do things pretty quickly. either for the next collection or even in between those collections.
Right.
So.
And how far in advance? Like right now, we're entering. We're pretty much almost in spring here. How far in advance are you working on the fall winter collection?
So fall is pretty much done, and now I'm actually working on next spring summer.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So how are you working a year in advance? Like, do you know what the trends are? Is there?
That's a really good question. Now there are actually trend forecast reports out there, and they're really expensive and detailed, and a lot of big brands do use those. That's why you'll see a collection and there's similarities between several brands. There might be like 5
They're
or
operating off the
8
same
core themes. Yeah, and they happen to have selected the same thing,
Right.
one of the same things from these forecasts. They're actually really amazing and inspiring. I've seen them.
Okay.
I think the subscription or to look at one is like $15,000 or $20,000. Like they're really,
Who's creating?
they're
these?
incredible. There's companies that's specifically what they do.
I see,
That is
okay.
their full-time job. They do color forecasts, material forecasts, like all these different silhouettes. The books are incredible. It's a really rich source of inspiration. But for me, it's just a little bit more natural, process, which means, I might happen to be on to certain things, or I might not be, but because my style is not like crazy avant-garde to start with, my style is pretty consistent, season to season.
Yeah.
I change colors, I change fabrics, I change details, but my overall silhouettes are actually pretty similar. Like once I find something that works, I don't feel the need to change it just for the sake of, and that's something that frustrated me as a consumer, is if there's a really great product like a shoe or whatever, and I love it and I want more, but I can't get it because there's all this pressure for new and different, and you have to change. But if I have like a blazer that works really well and a lot of customers are loving it, like I will not change it.
Yeah.
I might just change the fabric. That's it. And people like that. I have some customers who buy 3 of the exact same thing, and they're like, when I find something I like, that's what I want to wear.
Yeah.
So, and I respect that. I totally understand it, because I'm the same way. I'm still wearing this jacket from like 14 years ago, and I have hundreds of jackets to choose from. But if you nail it on something and you like it, why not?
Why not? Yeah. It's like buying the same shirt in 4 different colors.
People do that too.
Yeah.
I think
what I do, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I have this same shirt. I have this in black, I have it in green,
Yeah.
I have it in purple.
Yeah. I think that's a good thing. I think more designers should do that. I don't see it very often.
Well, it's because then you can't go back and get it if it's no longer made, ultimately, right? Would you ever put your label on another product? Like I've seen some brands will go and they won't design it, they won't create it, but they'll go somewhere and they'll basically say, okay, I want to turn this into X brand, and so they'll slap their label on top of it. They'll purchase the rights to it. I don't know how it works, but I've seen it happen. Is that something that happens often, and is it something that you would do?
So you mean like a company that does like not like apparel, like just a...
Yeah, like I'll give you an example. I used to work for a shoe company, and they would often go to Italy, and they would go and purchase the rights to sell. This is how I understood it. They would go and purchase the rights to sell a pair of Chelsea boots, let's say, and then they would take their label and slap it on the bottom of the shoe or on the inside of the shoe.
Yep.
So they didn't have a hand in designing it, in creating it, nothing like that. But they just, I guess, wholesale purchase.
It's like a license kind of,
Essentially,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. The king of licenses was Pierre Cardin.
Okay.
And he actually had his name on scuba gear. That's how far it went. So, but he made hundreds of millions, if not billions, off of this type of, putting your name onto other products thing.
Yeah.
So I'm not opposed to it. It depends. If it's a high quality product, something that, maybe I'm personally passionate about or that makes sense for my target market, why not? But when I was starting out, at a really difficult period, near rock bottom, and there was a sunglasses company that wanted to put my name on their sunglasses, and they were going to give me $15,000, which at the time was huge. huge. And I said no because they were cheap sunglasses. And I really needed the money.
Yeah.
But I've been super protective with my brand up until this day. You know, still I'm very protective of the brand. So like I said, it has to make sense.
Awesome. Well, listen, I respect that. I respect the fact that you were in a position where you didn't want to and you needed the money, and you had to sort of reconcile how to protect the brand. And I think you're stronger all the more for it, right? And I think that resonates and that carries through to the point that you're at now, where you're still very protective of the brand. Like, as much as you liked Top Gun and like The Godfather, it seems as though you would not take those on unless you thought that you could do it right.
That's true.
Yeah.
And there have been other, licenses out there that I've had a shot at. I won't say, were offered to me on a silver platter or anything, but I could have pitched, let's say. Right. But I didn't feel like they were the right fit for me, the brand, and that I would give it the requisite time, to do a really good job. Yeah. So I said I had to pass on a few interesting opportunities.
Interesting. Where can people find you?
So best place to start is ChristopherBates.com. We have a private studio in the Eaton Center. There's information about that on our site. We're currently operating a separate site for Top Gun, which is topguncollection.com, and for The Godfather, which is thegodfathercollection.com. In addition to that, we're at select retailers, Got Style in the Distillery District, The Coop, George C. in Yorkville, Shinobi in Vegas and Newport Beach. So shouts out to all of those great stores for carrying the brand.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I appreciate you coming by.
Thanks for having me.
It's been an hour. It flies.
Time's up.
Yeah. No, but listen, you're doing incredible stuff, and excited to see where this goes. Best of luck with the Godfather collection, the Top Gun collection, all the other stuff that you're doing. It's inspiring because I think one of the things that's resonated for me, at least, is how dedicated you are to making sure that you remain true to your passion, and that everything else that's happening on the side, the business elements of it, as important as it is, means nothing if it wasn't for the fact that your designs, your creative side has to come through first and foremost. And I think it's important because I think sometimes we see a lot of people sacrifice some of that in order to make an extra dollar.
Right.
And it really resonates even more when you tell the story of when you're at rock bottom and someone offers you $15,000, which today $15,000 to a lot of people is a lot of money.
Even today, it's
still a lot of money.
Yeah,
right.
Sure.
Somebody walks in and says, "I'll give you $15,000." Just slap your name on something and that's it.
Right.
So to do that at a point when you needed it, I think reinforces that the character behind the brand. And so thank you for sharing that, and thank you for coming by. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Oh, appreciate it. Everybody, thank you very much. Make sure you're tuning in, subscribing, and liking and following and all the other stuff. Yeah. Make sure you check out Christopher Bates. He's doing incredible work. Poncho, we appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.